Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 27th of August of 2026. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where during the previous 24 hours the Russians carried out one of the biggest attacks on the territory of the city of Kyiv, dealing significant damage first of all to the Ukrainian logistics. So this map was published this morning, and here we can see that indeed the Russians were using a lot of means of attack, especially lots of missiles, but the sources are saying that the Russians haven't used Iskander ballistic missiles. The Russians used upgraded S-400 missiles, and this is a very important situation because Russia did not launch any Iskander M ballistic missiles towards Kyiv tonight and has successfully depleted a large portion of Ukraine's newly delivered Patriot interceptor missiles with modified S-400 missiles last night. There is a high threat of a much larger attack on Kyiv city and Kyiv Oblast taking place during the weekend, with the highest threat being in place for the night after tomorrow. So either during the upcoming night between the 27th and the 28th of August of 2026, or tomorrow between the 28th and 29th, the Russians will attack the territory of Ukraine, especially the city of Kyiv. But when talking about this picture, when talking about areas where the Russians carried out reconnaissance operation, we believe that the Russians would attack the city of Kyiv and the Kyiv region, their territory around the settlement of Cherkasy, the area around the settlement of Kropivnitsky, and the area around the city of Poltava. As for the previous 24 hours, as for the previous overnight attack, the Russians were mainly attacking the eastern parts of the Kyiv agglomeration, more precisely the territory of the territory between the cities of Velika Alexandrovka and Boryspil. More precisely, the Russians destroyed these territories. So this is the map by the end of the 26th of August of 2026, and this is the 27th. As you can see, lots of territories were damaged, and the most important thing is that the Russians destroyed at least two warehouses. So this is the first facility that was destroyed by Russians, and this is the second facility that was destroyed by Russians as a result of the overnight attack. Several videos were published, several satellite pictures were published as well, and both satellite pictures show us that this is the situation by the end of the 22nd of August, and this is already the end of the 27th of August. We can see a very big black smoke over this territory rose right after the Russians attacked this facility. Here we have the same story. This is the 22nd, this is the 27th. As for this territory, the fire is much larger. And we have this video where we can see the consequences of attack. Here we can see civilians moving between these territories, filming the situation in this area. And as you can see, a very big smoke over the territory, which means that most likely these facilities were completely destroyed. And these are not the first facilities that have been destroyed by Russians since the beginning of the logistic war. As we discussed during the previous video, up to 10 facilities were destroyed by Russians to the southwest of the city of Boryspil, this one, to the west of the city of Boryspil, these two, to the north of the city of Boryspil, this one, and several facilities were destroyed on the territory of the settlement of Brovary. Obviously, the Russians, since the beginning of the logistic war, have dealt significant damage to the economy of the city of Kyiv and to the logistics both of the city of Kyiv and the armed forces of Ukraine. Let's take a look at several more videos published from this area. Let's take a look and let's try to understand the damage that the Russians managed to deal. In this video, we can see different services, fire crews of Ukraine trying to extinguish the fire using helicopters and using aviation. And in this video, we can see a black smoke probably right after the Russians attacked this territory, because this video was added somewhere around at 9 a.m., which means that just a few seconds passed since the Russians attacked the territory of the city of Kyiv. One of the biggest attacks, but once again I would like to point to attention that the destruction of these facilities wasn't the most and the primary target for Russians. The most important task for Russians was to deplete Ukraine's Patriot missiles, and the Ukrainians did that. They used up to 8 Iskanders, up to 8 PAK-3 missiles to intercept modified S-400 missiles, and now the Ukrainians are armless before the next massive attack that most likely will take place in coming days. The city of Kyiv wasn't the only settlement that was attacked by Russians. During the previous 24 hours, explosions were recorded also through the Kremenchuk oil refinery. But as for this territory, later we checked the fire anomalies maps, and no fire anomalies were recorded through the Kremenchuk oil refinery, which means that the Russians, if they attack something, they attack something useless and empty. Explosions were also recorded through the southwestern parts of the Odesa region, and this is a very important situation. The thing is that pro-Russian sources reported that different military-industrial complexes where facilities were destroyed and damaged and so on, infrastructure facilities in the ports of the Odesa region. But later we received a report from the Moldovan authorities. The Moldovan Ministry of Defense said 5 drones violated the country's airspace overnight, with another found on the ground following a Russian attack in Ukraine. So if the drones were discovered on the territory of Moldova, this means that once again the Russians using drones were attacking the border crossing checkpoints with drones, and most likely derbies or drones across the airspace of Moldova, missed targets and probably fell down on the territory of the neighboring states. So most likely the situation, and this is another proof that the Russians right now are concentrated to destroy technical capabilities of Ukraine and Moldova in maintaining the process of import and export of products along the border. So the Russians just are trying to stop the traffic through these territories, because the Russians probably don't have possibilities to attack the port infrastructure every day. So the easiest ways for Russians is to destroy technical capabilities along the border between Moldova and the southwestern parts of the Odesa region. Now let's move further. A lot of explosions were also recorded through the city of Zaporizhzhia. The sources reported that facility was badly damaged through the western parts of the settlement, and this is not the first strike since the beginning of the logistic war. The sources reported that it was the second strike through this facility. Furthermore, the Russians attacked the industrial complex in the eastern parts of the city of Zaporizhzhia. Here we can see the consequences. As a result of attack, a fire broke out immediately. Furthermore, according to information we have, this morning, right after the Russians finished attacking the city of Kyiv, lots of explosions were also recorded through the city of Kharkiv. The Russians were attacking the southern parts of the settlement, were using Iran drones. The Russians were attacking this mall, and as a result of attack, this facility, this mall was also wiped out. In this video, we can see the aftermath of the overnight Russian attack. We can see the special services that are trying to extinguish the fire, trying to stabilize the situation. Most likely this facility wasn't destroyed or reduced to ruins completely. Probably several blocks of this area the Ukrainians managed to save, but one thing is clear, that this warehouse suffered critical damage, and now this warehouse needs to be repaired or something like this. Meanwhile, we continue receiving updates about the yesterday's visit of the CIA Director Ratcliffe. Today we received another report on this matter. Putin may agree to end war by mid-2027 over US election concerns. Vladimir Putin is said to possibly agree to end the war in mid-2027 due to concerns about a change in the US presidency, according to The Atlantic. It is noted that if Ukraine survives this winter and retains the ability to strike deep inside Russia, the Kremlin could consider ending the war in mid-2027. Moscow may fear that after 2028 elections, the White House will be led by a more pro-Ukrainian president. Therefore, Putin is likely to try to negotiate with the Trump administration on terms favorable to Russia. So, and according to this article, most likely the conflict between Russia and Ukraine will last for another year, till the summer probably, or till the end of the summer of 2026. 7th till the beginning of the autumn military campaign of 2027. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes were recorded. And first, let's talk about the city of Zaporizhzhia, where the Russians continue very heavy clashes for the settlement of Orekhiv itself. These days, the Russians intensified use of FPV drones through the area. Lots of videos were published by pro-Russian sources how they attack every single building step by step, trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back from the central and the southeastern parts of the settlement of Orekhiv. We see that the Russians established complete complete control over the territory, and that the Russians are continue advancing. At the same time, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received updates about changes on the ground. Furthermore, the group of forces east during the day reported that as a result of clashes, the settlement of Shevchenkivske was captured by Russians, and this video was published by pro-Russian sources. In this video, we can see how exactly the clashes for the settlement were taking place, and during the final part of this video, we can see at least 2 or 3 flags raised by Russians in different parts of the settlement. Based on this video, based on the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, based on the report published by the group of forces east, we have adjusted the map. So this is, for example, the end of the 24th of August of 2026. This is the moment when the Russians captured the settlement of Dalinka. This is the end of the 25th of August of 2026. This is the end of the 26th of August. The Russians improved their positions through the village of Nizhenka, and this is already the end of the 27th of August of 2026, and as a result of clashes, the settlement of Shevchenkivske was taken. Currently, the distance between edge positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation and the settlement of Novomykhailivka is already less than 10 kilometers. The Russians continue advancing, and it seems that the settlement of Novomykhailivka is a primary target for Russians, because a very big part of this village is located basically on the Russia side of the river of Verkhnya Tersa. This might be a very strong, a very powerful stronghold for Russians if they take this territory under complete control. This stronghold, this settlement would allow the Russians to concentrate lots of forces and to hold the line along the river of Verkhnya Tersa without consequences and without any problems from the Ukrainian side. At the same time, the village of Novomykhailivka is already a direct, straight direction towards the city of Zaporizhzhia itself from the northeastern direction. So from this area, the Russians may try to attack in the direction of the city of Orekhov, of the city of Zaporizhzhia along N15 road. And this also territory is located very close to railways that goes from the settlement of Zaporizhzhia through the settlement of Vilnyansk in the northeastern direction, because the distance from this settlement towards the railways is already less than 30 kilometers, which means that even the Russian artillery would be able to hit these railways and to stop any traffic, any service through this area. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation through the Novopavlovka direction. Several sources reported about additional changes on the ground between the villages of Bilakovka and Muravka, and these are the changes on the ground. The Russians, according to different sources, finished the battle for this small village and managed to approach the settlement of Novopavlovka basically from behind, from the northeastern direction. In coming days, the Russians will intensify their offensive operation in this area. Now let's talk about the Drobropillya direction. During the previous 12 hours, additional changes were also recorded. So these days we receive lots of updates about sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Pro-Ukrainian sources reported that during the previous 4 days, the Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups were recorded behind Ukraine main positions around the settlement of Drushkovka. As a result of those operations, the Russians managed to ambush operators of drones of the armed forces of Ukraine. Also today and yesterday we received reports that Russians also approached the settlement by the name of Bilozerske. Furthermore, a very big fire anomaly was recorded through this area, which means that the Russians began bombing and attacking this territory with aviation, with artillery, trying to reduce to ruins the central part of the settlement, the Bilozerske citadel. It seems that the Russians decided before moving further and before finishing the battle for the city of Drobropillya to test and to check Ukraine's defense capabilities through the settlement of Bilozerske. Maybe the Russians decided to test and to see whether the Ukrainians are able to control the territory, because if the Ukrainians don't have well-prepared defenses or enough of manpower, the Russians would try their luck and to take the village under complete control with the purpose to outflank the settlement of Drobropillya from the north. And of course, if it happens, this is going to be a complete and total collapse of the entire Donbas arc defense operation from the Ukrainian side. The Russians would be able to enter the Donbas operational space and to continue advancing further in the northwestern direction and in the northeastern direction as well, trying to cut the main logistic lines and support lines of the armed forces of Ukraine through the rest of the Donbas region. As for the city of Drushkovka, the clashes are very heavy in this area. Today, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Russian Federation reported that street fights are already taking place on the territory of the villages of Kurtivka and Verolyubivka, which means that if this information was provided by the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, we believe that in coming days the map could be adjusted in this area. At the same time, the Russians established complete FPV drone control over the main logistic arterias. We are talking about N20 road and the road by the name of the street of the 81st Brigade. During the previous 24 hours, lots of videos were published from this area, and through these videos we can see dozens of vehicles of the armed forces of Ukraine that were destroyed while attempting to bring additional reinforcements and reserves in the direction of the city of Drushkovka. And we are not talking even about the settlement of Alexeyevka Drushkovka, which is located right along the line of combat contact. We're talking about probably deep rear, but even in deep rear, the Russians have complete and total control over the main supply lines. So the battle for the Slavyansk-Drushkovka agglomeration enters its decisive phase, and which means that the entire conflict between Russia and Ukraine enters the decisive phase. And maybe the president of Russia understands that maybe the mid-2027 is the moment when in theory the Russians are able to establish complete control over the region of Donetsk, and maybe he's going to use this to announce a victory and to finish the war with the Ukrainian side. Of course, on favorable conditions for Russia. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation through the northern directions. During the previous 24 hours, almost no changes were recorded. One thing is clear, that there are very heavy clashes, and we expect that in coming days or in coming hours, the group of forces north will report about additional changes on the ground, especially through the Veliki Burluk direction. We haven't received anything from this area for a very long period of time, and we expect that in coming days we will receive report about the city of Kazachий Lopань, where several days ago the Russians managed to break through Ukraine's defenses and to cross the river of Lopань. As for the Sumy direction, during the previous 12 hours, nothing special was recorded, just very heavy clashes along the border. And as for the Chernihiv direction, as we discussed during the previous videos, the Russians finished preparations before the beginning of a major Chernihiv offensive operation. Most likely this offensive operation the Russians are planning to start right before the beginning or the end of parliament elections, with the purpose to have strong cards for the current Russia's authorities. If the Russians are able to improve their positions along the border and to create a buffer zone for another 10 kilometers in depth in the direction of the central part of Ukraine, this will allow the Russians to force the Ukrainians to move their launching sites in the direction of the city of Kyiv, and this will allow the Russians to bring a bit closer Iskander systems launching sites to the city of Kyiv itself, which will shorten the distances and the time required for Russians to attack the city, which means that Ukrainians will have even less chances to bring down and to intercept Russian missiles. And that's it for today. The Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.